Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tome Travelers. This is episode 11, where we are talking about parts 1 and parts 2 of the Lies of Locke Lamora. Really excited. There's a lot that happened this episode that we're going to dive into, and I'm really excited for it. But we do have a couple of announcements before we get started. First, and it's kind of a big announcement for us, is we are officially launching our Tome Travelers Discord. So the link of it will be in the description of the YouTube video. I'm not sure if it will be in like the Spotify description or the Apple Podcast description because I'm not
You
sure.
can put it on the Facebook page.
We can do that. Yeah, we'll also throw it on our Facebook page.
Too.
So if you're really enjoying our content, go ahead and join our Discord, and we're going to have channels for discussions and spoiler discussions, so that way we can all have fun there and not have to worry about spoiling things in the YouTube comments. And then we're also announcing next month's book, which is July's book. No, this month. Yes, July's book. I don't know what month it is. But we are going to be reading The Emperor's Blades by Brian Stavely. And it's the first book in a trilogy called The Chronicle of the Unhewn Throne. I'm really excited for it. It was recommended to me by a good friend, so I'm excited to read it for the podcast. But yeah, spoiler warning for parts 1 and 2 of Lies of Locke Lamora. If you haven't read it, go read it. Trust me, you'll
And
be
many
thankful.
other books based on our question.
Oh yeah, true enough. But before we do get into those spoilers, we have our fantasy question. So Whitson, what is our fantasy question?
What is your favorite moment, scene, chapter, or episode in fiction? So one self-contained story arc or scene.
Dylan, you want to go first?
Yeah. So first off, spoilers for Oathbringer. Oathbringer?
Oathbringer?
Yep.
Yeah, Oathbringer. If you have not read the book,
Skip
do not
ahead
listen.
just a little bit.
Skip
Just a little bit.
Just 10 seconds in the future.
10 seconds, 20 seconds. I tend to ramble.
I
I don't know if this is my favorite scene, but it's the first one that popped in my head, and it's an epic scene. But you have Kaladin and Shadesmar trying to say the fourth ideal. You have Dalinar breaking down to Odium and about to turn to the dark side, and then you've got Yasna over here about to stab Renarin, and it's just bouncing back, literally like back and forth between their every page is a different one of them, and like they're each taking steps towards the work, and you don't know who's gonna do what, and then all of a sudden, boom, convergence, and it's an epic scene. I was screaming,
Dude,
I was yelling.
It's such a good one. It's such a good one. Mine was from the second book of that series, which is Words of Radiance. So if you're still here, keep going if you haven't read that yet. But and I really like have to toss and turn between these two scenes in the book, but I think I'm gonna go with not the end scene, but the one where Kaladin jumps into the ring to help Adolin and Renarin. I like the first time I read that, I have full body chills. I was like, no, like his line that he has goes so hard before he jumps in there, and like then they just start popping off. That entire sequence of events was awesome, and it really took the Stormlight Archive to the next level for me. So that's mine.
Epic, you want to take it?
Yeah, so to jump away a bit from books, even though they have books as well. Spoiler warnings for Mass Effect. For anyone that doesn't know, or maybe you guys don't even know, I am a giant Mass Effect fan. It's my wallpaper. I have a full real-life Commander Shepard helmet that you can wear.
Oh,
that
that's
fucking
awesome.
glows. Renegade, Paragon, etc. I love Mass Effect. And the scene that always sticks with me and jumps to my head for anything that's like my favorite scenes is the death of Anderson at the end of the third game. Where he's,
Yeah.
him and Shepard are having that sit down. They're both literally hanging on by a thread. You can probably hear it in my voice that I'm already getting emotional about it, just thinking. Just when he looks over and is like, talking about how he's proud of Shepard and everything, it just every time hits home and gets me like emotional, if not teary-eyed. I cried the first time I saw the scene. Reading it, seeing it again, etc. I loved it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Those are good games too.
They
Oh,
are.
yeah.
All of them. Okay, so mine is like probably 80% of my answers from Kingkiller Chronicles. And it's in the first book, pretty soon into it, when Kvothe is in the forest with his lute and strings start to break, and he's relearning how to play it with different like amounts of strings. Yeah, that scene's just gorgeous. Like the forest and the music and the way that Kvothe feels, all of it is like really, really, really well communicated and just gorgeous.
When he's trying to get his pipes is really good too.
Yep, the duet with Denna, that was
Yeah.
one of the other ones that I thought of for this.
I still haven't read those books, but I've heard just the writing is gorgeous in that book.
Mhm.
So,
Especially if you love music,
Yeah.
a lot of it is very musical and tied to music.
yeah. All right. Well, with our questions out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into episode 11 of The Tome Travelers.
It really does look like you have a green screen back there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Hay fields.
For the audio listeners, he's just got hay bells behind him. It's all you can see behind him is hay bells.
I'm in a hotel room.
All right, Whitson, are you
This
doing
is
our
their
synopsis?
decor.
Sure, yeah. So the Gentlemen Bastards have successfully fooled the Salvaras thus far. Their game has been interrupted by the Grey King and the Falconer's intercession. Barsavi lost the daughter, Nazca, that he thought was going to wed Locke. Locke narrowly avoided having to attend the meeting at the Echo Hole beside Barsavi by poisoning himself and vomiting all over his room. When we leave him, he's locked in a barrel of horse piss, just like Nazca. And then we've learned a great deal in the past about Jean and how he became the brawler, the badass. And Sabbatha's still kind of a mystery. And I think that's the majority of the major story points.
Also, it's a wed space lock, not wedlock.
Oh, yeah.
You ran your words together, and I was like, I wonder if he noticed that.
Nope, sure didn't. Lock the character.
The character. Okay, so Matt, Cam, what'd y'all think about this part? This half.
This was...
Okay, there's a lot
Okay,
to
I'll let
unpack.
you go. I'll let you go.
No. You could take it this time, because
Okay.
man,
So
He's gotta
I'll
sort
be
himself
honest. We
out.
ended the last episode, and after we finished, I told Whitson, I was like, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not as hooked as you've been hyping it up to be. And he was like, I'm actually hurt. Like, he was genuinely offended that I was just like, I'm not as into it as I have been. And then we got in the call today to record this episode, and I go, Whitson, I'm hooked now. and they're like, we got him. But this part has just been so much fun to read. Like, I love, like, they're building the world even more through it. Like, they, one of the parts that I just thought of was, like, super fun and creative was, like, they had a little, like, purge, essentially, where, like, all the thieves and stuff can, like, fight to get their sentences reduced and things like that. And, like, everyone's on their pleasure boats or whatever. I thought that was pretty neat.
The Revel.
Yeah, the Revel. And then I also just liked where the story went. Like, I felt like there was more, not like more direction where we're
Yeah.
going. Like, because in the beginning you're just kind of like, what's happening? Like, I don't know. And now I feel like I'm understanding enough where we're going. So I'm really enjoying it now, and I'm really excited to keep going.
Scott Lynch's description, I've noticed that on the reread, his descriptions of scenes and the scenery, immaculate.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
it's so good. And it's because it's not boring either. A lot of the times when they get over descriptive, it gets boring. But the way he words everything, it's not boring at all. It's fantastic.
Well, I think it's just that it's always relevant to the scene, and he's only
Yeah.
describing things that are like fantastical. Like he's not describing like
I feel
every
like-
speck of dust. He's
Right.
saying like this is the he's talking about the 5 towers, and he's like one
Yeah.
is like the broken rainbows like an oil slick pool, and like
Yeah.
he's talking about things that are insane, incredible, fantastic. He's not.
I feel like maybe I don't remember for sure. Like I can't think of an example, but I feel like he describes like basic stuff really well too.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
sometimes he
Yeah.
gets like really nitty gritty about it. But I think when he's doing the world building stuff, he's talking about like the most memorable part of it, or even the filthiest part of it, right? Like he's talking
Yeah.
about Jean throwing the puke buckets out the window, and he says, Camorr are dumping shit in the Vai Camarazza all the time. So
Yeah.
you get the feeling that it's like gritty and nasty.
Yeah.
And, like, you feel how like dense and shitty Camorr is.
Yeah.
But you also feel like that the Elder Glass makes you think that it's fantastical too.
Yeah.
So
And literally the next chapter, I believe, it describes. Maybe it's the next chapter. It describes what's in the bridge,
um,
or the
which
big the
bridge?
big Elder Glass overlook, where you can look down and see all of Camorr through the
Uh,
glass.
oh, you're talking about one of the towers.
Well, it's got like a huge bridge or whatever, and like you can look down and see all of Camorr while you're walking over it.
I don't remember.
It'll describe, but anyways, the way he describes that's really cool too. But what about you, Cam? What do you think?
Oh, I definitely thought this was great. Completely different from Matt. I was hooked, and then now I am way hooked still. Just sitting here like, even earlier I was talking to Whitson where there were things where I'm like, to skip ahead to the end of this where we stopped off. I'm like, there's no way they killed Locke. It's the end of the book is named after him. There's no way they've mentioned Jean being at the waterfall and all this stuff. And then Whitson just goes, okay, and I'm like, but if they did, that'd be so ballsy. And he's like, huh, that's an interesting thought. So now I'm just sitting here like, oh my god, what is it?
And the
What
thing
is
is, too,
it?
the thing
We
is
shall
too, is the
see.
book's called The Lies of Locke Lamora. So
Yep.
even if he does
Yep, it
die, it
doesn't
could be
necessarily
it's
mean.
the things that he's set up, and it's like,
Yep.
is he? Oh my gosh,
We've
dude.
seen a lot of flashbacks too, so maybe he did stuff that we don't know about yet. And
Yep.
they flash
And
back
then
to it.
we're just flashbacking for dude.
So speaking of flashbacks,
I didn't
this
thi-
is actually
Go ahead.
this is one of the things that I brought up as well when we were just talking outside of the recording here. I want to know what the fuck is going on with Sabitha. They keep mentioning her over and over and over, and not once have we actually seen her yet. At first, for a while there, I'm like, is she the Grey King? Like, is she the Grey King? And then they talked about how, like, Locke's here, and I'm sitting here like, we still don't know exactly who the Grey King is, so maybe it's it's honestly making me frustrated in a good way to where I'm like, I just need the closure. I need the payoff because
Yeah.
it seems like they're building up to something with her.
I'll say the first time I read through, I was the same way about Sabbath. I was like, when is she gonna show up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I can't wait for you guys to scream at me and Dylan
This next
sometime
part?
this week.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that the revel was one of the talking points that I had written in our show notes. I wanted to ask you guys what you thought, basically about the world building as a whole, which you kind of got into, but the Contra Requialas, the shark fighters, and the devilfish, that kind of thing.
So
And
not
then also, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, not only those, just like the actual things in the world I like, just with his writing style. I do like when they mentioned like, oh yeah, people being fed to the fish, etc.
Yeah.
When like the
Mhm.
blood pools up in the water, he even points out in his writing that, hey, that's planned for because the next event is when they're all, actually fighting and you actually are like when it brings out all the girls and everything for their fight, the reason why they bloodied the waters is to cover like the fish and everything. Every little detail is just planned out because it seems like honestly he had the idea for everything
Yeah.
built through the story.
Yeah.
He's like a master DM, and he knows what everything is gonna look like, and he's like,
Very, very easy
What's
to
under this
railroad the
tile?
characters when you make the characters.
exactly.
Just planning all of Locke's games. I feel like you've got to be such an intelligent person, you know.
Dude, yeah,
Mm.
that's right. Like half the stuff, like I'm still trying to figure out what he's doing with half of his stuff. Like
So,
half of it.
I
Go
do
ahead.
want to come back to that as a topic as well before we gloss over the revel. But there's something that come after the revel that we can get to that I want to bring up.
Okay, let's go with the Revel then. So I kind of already talked about how I enjoyed it a lot. And I'm excited to see where
Well,
if it
so
comes.
that's
Yeah, go ahead.
the world building was something I wanted to ask about, but then also the scene itself, how the scheme kind of gets revealed, or at least a big chunk of it gets
Figure out
revealed.
the
Where,
goal, yeah.
yeah, what his game with the
Or
Salvares
you
is,
think you
how
figure
he's
out
getting
the goal.
in. Yeah.
But that's what I was gonna say about that scene was like in the background, all that stuff's cool. Like I noticed it, but like I was so enthralled with Locke's game and like trying to figure out what he wanted, and then you see it at face value here, and he talks about how they got the different cask, how he had to go cheat a card game and win this one
In
cask.
Talisham, up the
Yeah,
coast.
and then he
yeah.
had to spend all that money trying to get back and escape from assassins. And then he talks about how the new cask is just an old cask and like a mixture of cheap shit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, cheap
Yeah.
white rum, I think he
yeah,
says.
he convinces them it's this fancy stuff, and then like we see him go from that to like we see him pull them in, and we're like, he pulled them in, he tricked them, and then we see this Midnighter thing happen. And when you
Yeah,
first
and
meet
it
the
doesn't tell
Midnighter,
you that it's Locke
yeah,
and John, or
Yep.
not Locke and
Yeah,
John, Locke
yeah.
and Callow.
So that's what I wanted to talk about is when that happened. I fucking fell for the game. I was sitting
Yeah.
here like, there's no way that like this happened. This is where the story's going.
Yep.
And then it cuts immediately to them before they happen, and then it's Locke and John going in, and I'm like, I fucking fell for it. Like I fell for it.
yeah. No, it's a really
Yeah.
good. So what do y'all? So going with that, what do y'all think about this scheme?
I
Do y'all
thought the
like?
team was. I thought it was genius. I mean, literally, they say it in the book where it's like, "Oh, this is our biggest heist yet, and
Yeah.
it's the easiest fucking thing we had to do. All we had to do is tell
Mhm.
him how we're doing it."
Yeah.
We don't even have to buy the ships or get
Yeah,
the crew. We
yep.
just-
Yeah. It also it got me too, that part, because like I was listening to the audiobook while I was at work, and like the scene's going on, and I'm like, okay, wait, here's a new character I'm gonna know, and like, how does he know who Locke is? How does he know what this stuff is? And then it swaps over to their POV, and I'm like, are you serious? Like, am I that gullible? But I'm like, but am I really gullible? Like, that's not something you should think about, you know? So, but yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
I do
Mm,
like
I-
too that they bring up a lot of things during that scene when he's faking to be one. Oh, I'm forgetting what their name are now.
The
Midnight.
Midnighters.
The Midnighters, yeah. How he brings up like, oh, how would you know what an unaged cast tastes like? Like it could have been fucking horse piss for all we know. And I had that thought when he brought out the unaged cask.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but how would the I am terrible with names. I apologize.
Don
Salvara?
Salvara.
How,
Yeah.
Yes, the Salvars. How would they? I had that thought exactly, and then as soon as they're telling me everything, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not as clever as I thought I was.
That was
Here,
probably
you
the
know.
best. That was probably the best part. He breaks all the work he did earlier. He breaks it all down.
Yeah.
And basically makes it all pointless, but not really.
Yeah.
So, but so they describe these Midnighters multiple times. You think that's a real organization, or you think it's just like the Thorn of Camorr? It's just myth, legend.
Oh no, I think it's absolutely real. I mean, hell, the Thorn of Camorr is law. Like it is based off. The Grey King was, a legend, and then we meet him. There's no way we aren't gonna meet them at some point. I mean, hell, they even talk about it. They tell Bug that, like, no, the Midnighters are real. The Spider might not be, but the Midriders are for sure real.
Yeah, yeah. They talk about how the only people that can get away with anything is Barsavi and the Midnighters,
Yeah.
away from the Duke
Right.
or whatever. Yeah.
But then part of me also thinks, like, could it be something that Locke has been planning to set up for so long, and that it's myth by that?
God damn it! Why would you
Who
put that in my brain?
That's because that's
just
what
wanted
I'm
to
Why
name
would
thinking.
a
you
heart
say
attack.
that?
That's what I'm thinking. Pip
Who
took his headphones
knows?
off.
Well, so okay, what did you think of coming off that point? What did you think of meeting Barsavi, the secret piece, and kind of the way that
Nazca.
Camorr, yeah, the scene with Nazca, and then how Camorr's underworld works? Like, what thoughts do you have on that?
I thought it was, again, I keep saying it, and I'm a broken record here, but it was well flushed out. I loved the scene. I was telling my sister about the book earlier today, and the scene I pointed to for, like, just good dialogue was between the pawn shop owner and Locke when they're just bargaining back and forth. The bullshit box, I was telling her how, like, look, it's just a box, yet it is still described and explained why it exists very well. Like,
Yeah, the
As well
function
as-
that it serves.
yeah, as well as how every just little thing, there's a reason for, like, you can see the logic of, like, okay, this exists because of this, or anything like that.
One of my favorite like things from I think it's that scene or maybe a little before, but it's talking about how Chains taught them how to do all this stuff spectacularly, and
Yep.
they're spectacular at it, but they have no idea. He never taught them what
What
to
to
spend the
do with
money
it?
on.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just have
I
all this
lo-
wealth and are like, oh,
Yeah, I
there it is.
love that point because it goes to show kind of like really their personalities because they don't really have they don't need the money. They have no
Yeah.
motive. Like
There
they
is
have no
literally
plans for
no
this. Yeah.
reason that they have to do this.
They just love
But
tricking.
fuck it. That's pretty much what it has turned into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that literally to them, theft is sovereign. It's like righteous because their god is the god of thieves,
Mhm.
and like their death offerings, it has to be something stolen from someone else.
And I don't know if
Or
you'll pick up, but Locke is a head priest for the 13 now.
Yeah.
The 13th god.
Yeah, they do
So-
mention that to
so
skip ahead
basically-
later when Nazca died. They're like, oh yeah, he is a priest now. Like he's where Chains was when Locke came in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, it's almost like he's worshiping by doing his
Mhm.
games. But
So I mean,
He's a
going back
religious
with it,
boy.
that's another thing too. They're literally called games from the get go. Never is it a heist. Never is it a robbery. It's a game to them.
Mhm. Yep, they're trying to prove that they're cleverer than anyone else.
I mean, they
Cleverer and
are.
richer.
for better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Although Locke did just get tossed over.
Yeah.
In a barrel of
Hey,
piss.
he was all sewn up, man. He said he was all sewn up.
That's another thing I loved with the group and everything too. Just the lying bastard game that they play, like when they're eating dinner or just
Yeah.
before
Mhm.
the whole event, where it's like literally. And I'm waiting for them to get to Bug and like how he gets into the group. But you see, like, oh no, these are brothers and sisters that literally were raised together, and not just, oh, we hired this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The genuine camaraderie in these books is so fantastic. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it feels organic and like just genuine.
Especially Jean and Locke. Like we see them when they first
Mhm.
meet. They don't really like each other. Well, John's a baby and Locke's. Well, I mean, I understand why he's crying, but Locke's Locke's like doesn't like him. He's like, this guy's not a thief. This guy has nothing to do with us. He's not ever going to be a part of us. And then literally that end scene, we see the trust he has. He's getting the shit kicked out of him. He's like, John's coming.
Yep.
John's coming.
So I'm glad you brought that up too. That's actually my favorite scene from what we read, besides like chapter 1 and the prologue, is when John's kicking the shit out of Locke. Just because it's like, okay, how do we get from like mature Jean to like honestly, Jean's become my favorite character. Like
John's
of
a really good
everything.
character.
Anytime he's in a scene, I'm like, okay, I'm happy.
Everything's okay.
Yeah. Jean is like the pillar of. He's just like the pillar of the group. Like,
Mm.
in my opinion, like you got Locke and he's like the mastermind, but like when he needs to be brought back down to earth, Jean's there to be.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna listen to you, but like eventually you're gonna get over your head, pop.
Gonna bite off more than you can chew, and then I'm gonna have to handle it with fucking hatchets.
Hatchets.
Wait, that just reminded me, or not reminded me, but made me think of a fun little question. If they were all D&D characters, what would their classes be? As like a band of adventurers? Locke is obviously rogue.
No.
Mastermind.
I'd argue that he's a bard. Their whole shtick is acting.
I'd go with that bard.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
Bard, that's
mastermind
a good one.
rogue.
Sansa
I
and
think the
Galta would be rogues.
Sanzas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They'd
I think
be
the
rogues.
Sanzas are rogues, and then
Jean.
Jean is.
Fighter, monk.
Barbarian.
I was
rage.
thinking
I
barbarian.
wouldn't say
think it's barbarian.
I wouldn't say barbarian because I feel like barbarians in most D&D games, barbarians are kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Jean's-
to me, Jean is like Logan, right? You know, Chain says you go cold and make things happen.
Yeah.
Like that's
I
berserker
was
feeling
more like-
barbarian kind of thing to me.
I was feeling more like, well, so like in D&D, I don't know if it's still this way, but used to you had to be a fighter to dual wield, and so I was gonna do that, but also like kind of like throwing in like almost like a dual class like fighter monk type. This is kind of the vibe I get, but
Okay.
Yeah, he's also a capable sneak thief, though.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
he can still do a lot of that stuff.
Right.
So
Everyone
you'd
just
have
has
to
at
have
least
some kind
one
of
level
dual
of rogue.
class. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a fun little question.
Yeah, it just
Well,
came to
what-
my mind. I thought it'd be
Oh,
fun.
we can't leave out Bug then. We did all the others.
Oh, bug. Hmm. He's a grunt. He's like a level
Yeah,
1.
Yeah.
he's just a minion.
He's not even he's a
He's not even
sidekick class. Like
Not even a player character or anything.
You know
just
what Bug reminds me of?
Hmm.
Regis from the Drizzt series. Just
Yeah, no, definitely I see it.
yeah. Anybody who's read those, look at that. But he's just a sarcastic little bastard.
Yep.
Okay. So next big question: what do y'all think about bonds mages? And did y'all think y'all were gonna see magic at all when you
No,
first started reading it?
not
No.
at all.
Yeah. Like the way that like the world was kind of like set up with like this dark grimy place, I was like, okay, well then there's probably not magic, because if there was magic, then all the nobility would be the ones wielding it or something if the world's this grimy, and they're
Mhm.
not. And so I'm like, okay, there's probably no magic. And then this
Yeah,
happens.
I fully expected to see some like ancient technology type thing because like we have the Elder Glass from like the civilizations thousands of years ago, etc. Did not expect to see legitimate just magic up here though.
Yeah.
Just because they also kept it till what? We don't meet the
Yeah.
Hawkmaster till like or the Falconer until like what? A couple parts or a chapter like before where we stopped off.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
300 pages in,
Yeah.
which is wild.
After they've said I think it's been twice how prohibitively expensive the bonds magi are, and that's why Barsavi thinks that he can't have a bonds mage.
Well, like, did y'all pick up on how bonds mage work, or how that all works? About how so basically all the bonds mages stick together and they have like their own like
Yeah,
area,
pretty much
and
join us or you'll
Card
die,
fame.
and then they
yeah,
take over and just teach specific people who are
Right.
bound to their order type of thing.
exactly. And I don't remember if it said it in this book, but this isn't really spoiling anything if it didn't. But like, if they find someone else using magic and they have people looking for them and they don't join the bonds mages, they kill them.
Yeah,
So like,
Chain said that, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
James says it.
it's a monopoly. They have a monopoly on magic, and they charge out the ass for it.
Yeah.
So I really like the way the bonds mages are portrayed in the book and the magic system. And I really didn't think we were gonna have magic either when I first started reading, but like I really like the way he threw it in there.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but they brought up the bonds mages and like the whole group thing and all that, but they haven't actually explained how magic works yet, correct?
Yeah.
Nope.
Gotcha.
No.
And that's hard for me
Oh.
because I like hard magic systems that are very clear.
Well, we're not
and...
following a mage though.
Yeah.
I know, and it makes sense.
But hey, don't worry. When you get to the third book, you'll find out a little more about all of that.
Okay, good.
So,
Speaking of like the
I love
Falconer and
magic.
everything too, I've been sitting here going back to like Barsavi and them saying there's no way he could have them employed. With him being a 3-ring bonds mage, I'm wondering if like either the Grey King is somehow correlated to bonds mages, if he really did just pay the bonds mage, if the bonds mage owes him like a debt or something. Like, why is he here? Why is the Falconer here versus just like it could be just as simple as like, oh yeah, the Grey King had a shit ton of money from something else, but
it does
That's a
explain that.
great
You'll
question,
see.
Epic.
Okay.
That is a great question. You'll see. It explains it in very good detail.
gotcha. This is where they turn around and go, hey, the bonds mage is Sabbatha hiding her face the whole time, or some shit like that.
Wild turn of events.
Okay,
What about
so-
you, Matt? Did you have any specific thing about bonds mages you liked, or
Not really. I'm just very intrigued. But like, I love. So the reason I started reading fantasy was because of magic, and I was like, this is just so dope. And so anytime magic shows up in books, I'm immediately just drawn to it. Like, okay, how does it work? What does it do? And then like,
You're a
I
mage
would-
in a lot of-
really like the thing where he's like pulling the strands between his fingers and like weaving shapes and,
Yeah.
and things into it.
Yeah.
I thought
So-
you'd really get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
So actually, one of the things I forgot about too, I do like that they did mention at least somewhat is the limits of magic. How Barsavi's like, yeah, it said it'd protect you from quarrels and it would protect you from blade. My fist isn't either of those, so we were just able to beat the shit out of like right at the end. there.
Yeah.
it's
Like,
very,
it
he
is
mentions
very
it.
specific things.
It's very specific. Yep. But what y'all think about so like another thing I like about these books is the way they handled the flashbacks to when they're kids,
Yeah.
because it's not like every other chapter. Like you get a bunch of shit and then it's like it's an interlude. It's thrown
Yeah.
in there, and every one it has pertains to stuff we just saw.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like it explains things. One of the things that I thought was interesting. What did y'all think about him sending each of them to the different religious orders, becoming almost full priest in each religious order,
Yeah.
and then coming back and teaching the other kids about that? Because I thought that was really cool the way Chains did that. Because the way he's like he says, no matter what happens, passing as a priest can get you in a lot of places.
Yeah. People stare at the robe, not the person in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it's smart. Like Chains' entire not his entire goal, but a big goal of his is to teach these kids how to, impersonate and do these games essentially. And so he's literally sending them out to almost on their own learn and then come back and then be like, all right, now you all are able to all do this together. You should not fail in this matter, so.
Yeah.
The thing that I really like about it is that the characters never have to have a level up moment,
Yeah.
Like what Scott Lynch is telling you in those flashbacks is these characters know what they're doing. They're capable. You can trust them to make a good decision, even if it might still bite them in the ass.
Yeah,
Right.
there's no power ups. Like we don't have to wait for them to get stronger. Like they're at where they're at,
all
but
their tools are in their possession,
Yeah.
and we just haven't gotten to either how they do or don't get out of the
Yeah.
situation.
like we were
Right.
talking about Locke last episode. He's like raw material, and Change took it and made it in ingots, and then made it into metal and swords and all that. Like sharpened it, and but I like Whitson was saying, like it explains why they know the things they know. Like it doesn't just say they know this. Like
Yeah.
it gives very good reasons of why they know what they know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, it doesn't just list what they know or say they did this. It gives you a perspective, like their point of view of them learning the thing.
Right.
Yeah,
which I always like.
And kind of going back a little bit to what Dylan said about how it's laid out with the interludes being the flashbacks in a sense. I really like how this book is just laid out, where it's it has chapters, but the chapters are long chapters split into sections, and the different sections are different scenes essentially. And then it cuts away from the main story and goes back to the interludes and explains how they got the tools that they used or are going to use in the next chapter essentially. And I just think it's really nice.
I do like too, during the interludes, you see the progress of time. Like they mentioned, the Sanzas went off for a year, for their priesthood. We got Locke going off for several months. Hell, they mentioned them getting even better just at cooking still. They've grown up 3 years, and they finally made one good meal that changes. You know what? That would pass.
Yeah.
We're seeing the progress, as well as we're seeing, like you said, the raw materials of each person, like Jean being the brawler, Locke being the brains, but absolutely worthless in a fight. Chains mentions the Sanzas will be silver and everything, but never the gold. They will always
just jack of all trades.
Jack of all
be
trades.
second best. But they're a jack of all trades, and there's two of them. Sabbatha's wherever the fuck she is. They keep mentioning
besides gambling. Besides gambling.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Which the scene where Locke is about to go off to be a farmer, and he says, "I'm going to be the worst card player in the borough," and the Sanzas are like, "Yeah, bye."
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the scene when they're about to go into Barsavi's office and the Sanzas pull out the cards.
They pull out the cards and the guards
the guards take a step back like they're scared.
Dude, I love his line. He's like, "What? Everything you've heard is a story. I swear, everyone in that room except for me was having a bad day." Yeah,
I love that everybody.
I love
just
that
treats
scene.
And so it's just just whatever. Also when they're at the Black Alchemist, they just kind of hey, we're still available. And the Black Alchemist and her daughter are just yeah. So moving on, and they just completely gloss over them every time.
And every girl at the Gilded Lilies knows exactly who they are.
Yep.
Every one of the girls. He says he's going to cut their tongues out, and they're just well, we have a use for those.
Yep. So that's another thing too. I love that. Just again going back to camaraderie, where they're all giving Locke shit at the table to get over Sabbatha, and hey, literally just go get laid, man. And then finally he's like, you know what, I'm gonna do it, and they all turn and are so what happened to Sabbatha? They all immediately just 180. Only for then the next scene is for Locke to be at the Gilded Lily just going, I'm sorry, it's not you, it's me. It's oh my god, what the fuck?
was
So
pathetic.
fucking funny.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that no, actually, I did want to ask you guys. The House of Glass Roses is one of my favorite fantasy settings. I just want to ask you guys what you thought of that. I think it's
I
really cool.
absolutely loved it. Like,
Yeah.
especially too that they brought up the question of like, is that actually blood or is that like just the design, etc. And then they show the master literally putting the bloody rapier in and the roses sucking it up. It's like
Suck the blood up.
that
Yeah.
is beautiful.
The
Like,
imagery
Mhm.
used to describe it, and like it really engulfs you inside of it, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you think?
and oh, go ahead.
go for it.
I was just gonna ask what they thought about the Don that's teaching him, like the way he is, and how he's talking about the kids and all that.
And how he was one of the three farmers that Chains talked about.
Yeah. Well, it was Chains, him, and the farmer were war buddies, and they were the only three to survive or something like that.
I thought that was great because going back to our first episode, that's what I wanted. I wanted more backstory of like, hey, I want to know about Chains before he dies off for whatever reason. And then now we're seeing like, hey, it's not just him. Literally could write a probably whole prequel book if it's not already explained in the other two books, like about Chains and what led up to that war and everything versus just.
God,
I loved it.
From your mouth to Scott Lynch's ears. I need that. I need a Chains book.
Another thing that I find really interesting about his writing is there's a lot of, and y'all are gonna be like going back and overthinking things now, but there's a lot of things that are mentioned that seem not important at all, and then you hit the end of the book and it's like, oh, that was really important.
Mhm.
He
Dude, the
mentioned,
rereads are. I mean, it is
Dude,
just
I love a good book that has
juicy.
good reread ability.
So actually, let me ask that for you two who have read the book. Is there anything without like spoiling anything that you're catching on while rereading and going, "Oh shit! Like how did
Yeah.
I not?"
Yeah.
so this is like our fifth reread, so like not as much, but like the first reread I did, I caught so much because like he'll just mention little stuff offhandedly, but there's a reason it's mentioned, and you'll find out later. And like, did y'all catch the scene in uh the market at the very beginning? Now that we know about the falconer,
Yeah. So
Yeah, the Scorpion Hawk.
that just reminded me too when they even bring it up later. Like, hey, we saw it. I went back and listened to it and hearing about the Scorpion Hawk, I was just like, yeah, it was there. Like it
Yeah.
was in our face, and I just
yeah,
glossed
Well,
over it.
I will say I have noticed this time, and I hadn't on my previous rereads. There are points where Scott Lynch will literally tell you exactly what is going to happen in the story. He will tell you verbatim, word for word, exactly what is going to happen in the story, and you just don't know. You just don't know
Well,
until
I
later.
mean,
And
it's
you're
like it's like Locke telling the Salvari or whatever that this is literally how I'm scamming you, and
Mhm.
it's the exact same thing. I feel like, so I'm not
a
gonna
lot
be
of the things
surprised when it happens.
like I said,
I mean,
a
I
lot of
will
the
be, but I
things.
won't.
A lot of things I notice are stuff that's just like it just seems like it's just added for extra detail or added for scenery, but then like later it'll come up again and it'll be like, oh, that was really important. Oh, why are they like that's why that happened or that's why these people were this way and yeah. So
So
like everything has a purpose and a meaning.
Yeah.
So to kind of go back to, because I feel like we just kind of glossed over Barsavi's daughter dying,
Yeah.
and Matt, this is gonna be stuck in your head now. This is your fault. I've been sitting here wondering, like, okay, is she actually dead? Because the Grey King has a 3-ring bonds mage. She isn't like burned. She wasn't cremated or anything. They prayed over her, but I'm sitting here like they introduced her as a kid. You got one scene with her as an adult, and the next time we hear about her is Nazca's dead. So I just in my brain, I'm like, oh, is it another trick or is this just she's dead?
It's a good question.
Yeah,
know.
fuck you both.
Well,
It's a
I really like
quality question.
Nazca as a character too.
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I like whenever Locke was going in to meet with her dad, what's his
Barsavi.
name, Barsavi,
Yeah.
and like she met him in the hallway and was like, please just like say yes, we'll work it out later, but I can't tell you what it is. I was like, oh, he wants Locke to marry her. And then he goes in, I'm like, okay, bet I called this or whatever. And then they leave and they're like, all right, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get out of this. They're like, I like you as a friend. I was like, okay, I really like their dynamic with each other. They're really good friends. Like, they genuinely want the best for each other.
That really did. Oh, my bad.
No, it's fine. And then, like, she's just dead. And I'm like, okay, what happened? Like,
so see, I really did like that too. That threw me for a twist because I was fully expecting like, okay, now Locke's gonna love her, then Sabbatha's gonna show, and it just be a stupid love triangle. That's like, you know, the cliche love triangle. And then immediately she's like, look, I like you as a friend, Locke. I love you as a friend, but as a friend. And then it's just like, oh, you know what? This is gonna be great. I want to see their and she's dead.
Yeah. Although, but like it did get me thinking, like, okay, if Locke goes through with this or whatever, he's legitimately going to like be married into this family, and I'm like,
yeah, this royal family, basically.
Yeah. Does the gig stop there? Like, or can you be like, all right, fine, I made it, or do you keep playing the game? Like, you know?
Yeah.
But
that is a really fun. I've thought about that a couple times. I think that he would be playing the game with the secret piece still intact, and not Nazca running the underworld. I think he would still be poking holes in the secret piece with the Gentleman Bastards all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just in his nature. It's literally what he. I mean, they're doing it for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kind of.
He has larceny in his heart, boys.
Yep.
Larceny
in his heart. Oh man, the more and more I'm reading, that statement. I'm going back and rereading stuff.
He likes stealing stuff more than stuff.
Yeah.
More than stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Epic.
That's like
we're going to finish this book and then I just immediately turn around and just start flipping through the pages again.
That's like when he gets his first little release of the leash to go get that body, and he turns getting the body into a whole scheme against an entire area of the kingdom. And for days they're just bringing offerings like, "Hey, I'm sorry this happened in the market district," and meanwhile El Galdo's the one that stole the money from him, and Locke just pretended, got all the candles for free and everything. Like I love that game because that's like that's his first time interacting with Galdo and Carlo and getting them in the part of the game, and Chains is just laughing.
I do love that like moment of pride from Chains where he's like, this little bastard.
Yeah, and Locke doesn't even think twice about it. He's just like, well, what? I wasn't going to let us lose money on this.
Yeah.
Like,
we had to recuperate our costs somehow.
Okay, well, I think that we have most of the past stuff wrapped up, and even most of the game, I think. But the Grey King, we haven't really gotten into.
Yeah, we haven't dived into him.
I want to do the scene on the trailer.
He's really Sabbatha.
Yeah,
So
is that both y'all's guess? That the
I honestly don't think so at this point. It was a thought I had at first, but also I wouldn't be extremely surprised if it suddenly did happen. I honestly have no clue who the Grey King would be.
That's like where I'm at, where I'm like, I'll just throw out a random guess. Sure, Sabbatha's the Grey King.
Yeah.
Like, because I have no idea.
Also, that's the assumption that the Grey King is anybody except just the Grey King.
Right.
Like, that could just be what they are until they're no longer relevant to the story.
Well, what reason does he have to be in Camorr trying to take over the underworld?
Oh, that actually made me just start thinking. Sorry to kind of jump past your question with another question, but who was the person that talked to Barsavi about the Bonds Mage and everything? Like, not Locke, but they do mention that one of the Grey King's people went to him.
That's another really good question.
Oh my god! I mean, we haven't gotten much on the Grey King, and now that it completely upended my expectations, I still have no good guess on what the Grey King's doing.
I'm in the same boat. I genuinely have no idea. I just want to continue reading on, so I find out.
There have been a couple hints about his appearance, his accent, some small stuff, but might be worth a reread if you're trying to solve the puzzle before it gets answered.
Like I said last time, I'm along for the ride. If it's got to trick me and I got to reread the book, I will gladly do it. Like,
yeah, for sure. Okay, what did you think of the scene where Locke poisons himself? That one's really funny to me.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was funny. I enjoyed
He's
The
trying to sneak down the
dialogue.
trellis. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when they sneak down the trellis and and they end up in the woman's room after her lover is like
Well, there's
trying
all
to
three of
climb
them on
out
the
or
trellis.
climbing
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, their husband comes in.
I love Locke looking over at her while Jean and her husband are fighting. He's like, "Would you just pick a man to root for already?" Like,
My favorite is when the guy busts in and Locke says, "You got it all wrong. She came first."
yeah.
Oh man.
And then John says he's not going to tell anyone. He'll tell them it was 8 men when they all had
Yep.
cudgels.
Yeah, and meanwhile, it was just Jean. Okay, what about well, let's talk about the scene that we ended on.
The echo hole.
The echo hole. The bondsmaid just escorts him
Yeah.
over, says,
So
"Hey, I got your back," and then they send the dude up that is dying anyways, and it's like, "Hey, if you touch him, you die an easy death, but if you live, I'll give you riches." And
yeah.
I want to know if you saw it coming.
I definitely didn't think it was going to go the way that like Locke saw it going, where he just plays the Great King and walks out fine. I didn't know exactly that it was going to be the barrel of piss, I'll say, but I fully expected him to get his ass kicked, if not flat out like killed. And I was legitimately worried and everything, where it's like, oh, this is actually it. They might actually kill him here.
Right.
And then as soon as they said, oh, throw the barrel over the waterfall, set him out to sea, I'm like, oh, well, Jean's over the waterfall. They said that's their escape plan if shit went like bad. So now I'm just sitting here like, okay, well, Jean's gonna get the barrel. He's got axes that they keep bringing up and he hasn't used yet. Break open the barrel, like maybe Locke's dead. Maybe who knows? He drowned, or maybe I no clue.
That's
I
where
feel
I'm at.
like
I was like, Locke has plot armor. He's not gonna die. But also at the same time, I just don't know at this point.
one of the things that I am scared for, but also I really doubt it's going to happen, is that Bug is the one who's like, yeah, over the waterfall. And then once they throw it, like the Baron sees him, or Barsavi sees him and goes, why the fuck are you here? Like that's when then the Barsavi starts to like catch on, like, hey, maybe Locke isn't as, truthful to me as he's been, or at least
Yeah.
I thought he was.
I think it's
Sorry,
Going
that just
in-
made me go for it.
going into what you were just saying about Barsavi trusting Locke. I think that their interactions are interesting because he puts a lot of faith in Locke, and Locke mentions multiple times like he's one of the lowest earners.
Yeah.
So like I find it interesting that Barsavi, which I mean Barsavi says it's because Locke's always like consistent or whatever, but I always thought it was really interesting about how much faith he put into Locke, even wanting to marry his daughter off to him.
The
Well, he
prudence.
says it's prudence.
Prudence.
He also says like Locke never brings him the same amount. It might be
Yeah.
higher than the average or lower than the average, but he's not afraid to walk in there and say, "Hey, we didn't make as much this week," or "Hey, we made a ton this week."
Yeah.
And so he thinks that Locke is honest when Locke has never told the truth in his fucking life.
Yeah.
Not once.
So that actually started making me think too, because they mentioned that Nazca was able to keep that all in a mental note, like people bringing in the same stuff or bringing in different amounts, etc. Which now made me start questioning: is everything going to start falling apart because it was all in Nazca's head, and Barsavi's not used to doing this anymore because his daughter kind of took over on at least the financial stuff like that. Because they mentioned that she would go and write him a personal ledger to keep, at privately, even though he would never admit it. But if she is truly dead, is it going to fall apart, all that knowledge that she had? Or is it just going to be like, nah, Barsavi still knows what the fuck he's doing. He's been in the game too long to not. The more and more we're talking, the more and more I'm realizing I have questions that will
why
get
we
answered.
did the
eventually, but-
podcast.
His character's interesting too. I love the aspect of his theatrical aspect. Like he was in theater or whatever they said.
Yeah.
And that's why he's so dramatic about things.
One of the I wouldn't have even thought about this again. I just looked at our show notes and saw the question and show notes. The sage kindness scene. That's also one of my favorite scenes where he talks about the bag of glass and how he's breaking it up, and then he puts it on his head and he starts massaging it gently. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God,
Dude.
it's so brutal.
That honestly
Yeah.
made me squeamish. I was at work, just like, I
Yeah,
need to
dude,
get
me
through
too.
this. Like,
Me too. Dude. I was like, oh gosh, they said they started poking where the eyeballs were,
Yup,
and I was just
yup.
like, oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's fucking gnarly.
fantastic.
Well, I think we've covered the big story beats. Is there anything like
Yeah.
generally or like miscellaneous
What'd
scenes
y'all
that you
think
liked,
about that?
one-liners?
What'd y'all think about that last hit where they're like, "Hey, this is from Locke Lamora."
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I fully was expecting it to be like, oh yeah, we'll get a punch in for you, and then they just
They
forget
actually
about
did it.
or something. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it happened.
Yeah. No, it was
I
great.
just love that Locke is getting punched because he fucking spoke up. Like, once again, him just not shutting the fuck up got him an extra hit.
Yep, he had to.
I'm
He had
sensing a
to.
theme.
Had to do it to him. Had to play it up,
Mhm.
even though he was fucking dying. He's like, let me add a theatrical flair to this.
Yep.
Oh.
Well,
So
guys, I
one of
think
the
that
other
does it.
scenes, well,
Oh.
before we fully shut off, just going back to world building as well, and I brought this up and just now remembered it. Going with Locke's poisoning and when the Sansas were there, how the Black Alchemist like was even raking the coins into a bag to not directly touch it. I love just the little small touch like that where it's like, oh yeah, the coins could have been poisoned, or like they mentioned, hey, Black Alchemists don't live this long if they aren't cautious about every little thing. Like just once again, more world building and detail that just adds layer upon
Yeah.
layer upon layer.
Yeah, it's really good.
One more thing I had was, what do y'all think about the priests and priestesses of Azaguia?
Mm,
The lady along silence, the creepy
yeah,
one.
I didn't find her that creepy, and I actually listened to that part twice because I thought I was missing something. And I get
Is-
Locke and them were kind of freaked out, but I honestly thought it was more so that they were worried about having it being blown than just them being creepy or anything of that.
Is the
Yeah.
thing about the thing in this book, or is that in Red Seas?
They're speaking in code.
About John?
I know.
It's this
That's
book.
this book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's this book.
Okay.
That's why I was asking, because I was gonna say y'all learn more about them.
Okay.
But
See, I really just want scenes now, and maybe it happens with more later interludes where it is like the Sansas and not even Locke, where it's just like them at their priesthood for a month or a week or whatever. Just seeing more world building that's not
yeah,
directly related to Locke or anything that's going on with him.
I love how
Like,
they each talking about their priesthood. You just brought up. I love how they each have a specific way they would kill themselves.
Yeah.
I always thought that was fucking hilarious.
So actually, that reminds me of a thought I had as well. When you guys last time were talking about like, oh, this is going to be the part we cut off, I was expecting one of the Sansas to die here. I was expecting for one of the twins to just die off, and that's like the dynamic where you guys are like, okay, this is it now. And maybe it'll happen at the end of the book or later. I still fully expect one of the gentleman bastards to die by the end of this book.
You want some stakes?
I mean,
I love
not
me a good
necessarily
book
it
with
has to be
stakes.
death. I just fully expect something to, there's gonna be a moment where it all blows up in their face.
I love me a good character death. And by that I mean I hate it, but I love it.
Hell, going back
Well,
to
with that,
Oh, is that y'all's prediction?
that's
That's y'all's predictions.
oh yeah, that's a good point. Matt, you go first. I need time to think.
Dude, I don't know. I genuinely
Where do you think
don't
the
know.
game's gonna go? What do you think's gonna happen? You think Locke's making it, or if he's drowning?
I think
in
Locke's
shit?
making it. I still think
Locke,
he has plot armor.
he's definitely alive.
He has
yeah.
plot armor. He can't die. They've prepared somehow for this exact scenario with some niche plan already in the works that they're ready for it. He's definitely making it. I don't know where they go from here, though. I have no idea.
See, yeah, no, I have no clue. I think they're still going to keep trying to push the Don Silvara game as long as they can because they have mentioned, three
Just
different
free
times
funding,
now
yeah.
about stopping, and Locke's like, no, this isn't affecting us with the Great King. They're two different things. And I definitely feel like Varsavi's going to find out about Locke at some point. Like, I feel like that's got to be a plot point where, or maybe not Varsavi directly, but like one of his sons. But then Varsavi won't believe it because he thinks Locke is that trustful and everything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I fucking hate that. Why?
Dylan makes me upset in this moment.
Oh, I
Oh,
can't
man.
wait for that moment to come back and yell at you guys now. Just to have a I was right or a fuck you guys.
Oh, you will yell at us. I'm excited for next episode.
I'm also very excited. I'm excited to continue reading on because we got a lot to cover.
I'm also excited for when y'all want to read Red Seas and Republic of Thieves.
Oh yeah.
Dude, oh, Talvarar, I cannot
I was gonna
wait for you
say-
guys to see Talvarar and the Ghost Isles and all that stuff.
Yeah, I've already bought the second and third audio.
They are so
Me
good.
too.
They are, I wanted this. I've always said the first one's my favorite just because we get introduced and there's like so much like it's so good. But like Red Seas and Republic both like Red Seas the game is one of my favorites, but Republic like the story in Republic and the way it ends is it's so good. So
Yeah.
It's
My thing is, Camorr is my favorite setting, maybe in
Yep.
all of fantasy. But the second book, the narrative and the characters of the second book are just top tier to me. Even more than this one.
yeah.
Honestly, even get rid of the Gentleman Bastards completely, I would still
It's-
love another book just in this world.
Yeah, like
Yep.
focusing on something completely different.
Yep, set it 500 years before or after Locke's whole like group and everything, and just like it's just so good. That's all I can say. I've been literally recommending it to everybody, and I'm not even done with the book, let alone the series. Like,
Yeah.
it only gets better.
oh
Yeah.
god,
And I'm so
excited
happy that
for it.
you're that you
Yeah,
haven't
Epic
read books in
is-
a while and you're
Yeah.
getting like really
Yeah,
into it.
I
That's
haven't read-
awesome.
probably since high school. I mean, I read a couple of times like on trips and stuff like that, but most of it was either rereads or just a small
Mhm.
like manga or something. And now I'm obsessed with it again.
Yep.
Like it has resparked everything. Literally, my bookshelf, like way back here, if I can do it, full of everything. We got 2 of them now, and I think Sky's actually bringing home some more later today. She was getting more stuff from a store.
That's awesome.
Hell yeah.
I got my bookshelf too. So
I need one. My books since we moved have been. Those are
Yeah, I just
cookbooks,
don't-
though. Those are cookbooks.
Those
They're
are
cheap. They're
cookbooks.
easily replaceable.
I don't really have space like in my room, but like I've got this whole storage room outside that I thought about turning into like a little library because it's air conditioned. It's like I could put bookshelves all the way around it and put like a little nook. It'd be pretty cool.
that would be
Yeah,
that would be
Sounds
awesome.
Not only I just remembered I have these 2 here where we move most of our books, but also along this whole wall right here is just a bookshelf. They're half height, but I
Time to
forgot
stock
how
it.
much I actually own.
Hey, if you
And I
join the
want
Discord,
more.
send us a picture of your
Oh,
your
yeah.
bookshelf.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that'd be fun to
That'd be
do.
fun. Maybe we can
Most of
pull up
it-
some of the most egregious ones and the most
That would
like
be funny.
swagged
In place
out
of like a
ones.
fantasy question, we could
We
rate
should do
bookshelves
a-
1 week.
Yeah. We should do another tab. Speaking of fantasy, we should do a tab on there where they answer fantasy questions that we've answered.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a fun idea.
We can definitely
If
do that.
anybody has any other fun ideas for the Discord, we're launching it basically with just forum channels or chat channels for the
Yeah.
books that we've done, and then maybe we'll have like a create thread option for book recommendations and that kind of thing. Well, we're super open to feedback on the Discord.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we'd
a
like to have a
it's definitely a
community,
community Discord, so we want the community's input on it, especially as we build it and grow it.
Yeah.
hmm
But with all that, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this episode of Lies of Locke Lamora. As always, share, and subscribe on YouTube or follow on your preferred platform because we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we announced the Discord. If you want to join it, we'd love for you to join it. You can. It's also a great place to put your fantasy questions, so you can ask questions on the Discord, and just talk with other people who love books as much as we do.
And that link's gonna be on YouTube and Facebook, right?
Yeah,
And then we're gonna
YouTube
try to
and
get it on
Facebook.
Spotify. Is there like a description where you can put it on Spotify?
I think
or-
I'll see about that. Hopefully, it
Spotify has
should be.
link trees, but I don't remember how to actually set them up.
Yeah.
Well, I think our server has to be boosted to level 3 for us to have a permanent link. So we'll just
Right.
have to update it, per YouTube episode or something. It'd be
Yeah.
a little hard to keep up with on Spotify, and
Yeah, that's true.
but we could probably do it.
And then lastly, again, our next month's book is The Emperor's Blades by Brian Stavely. And so if you want to read along with us, go ahead and order it so that way you're ready to read alongside us, because I'm really excited for it. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and end the episode. So we will see you all next time on The Tome Travelers.